Probably here because you want to learn about cargo bikes, or maybe you're interested in purchasing a cargo bike. We're going to talk about my favorite electric cargo bikes for 2021. You know, the bikes I'm most excited about. There's definitely more bikes out there, and I think most cargo bikes are really great, but these are the ones that I specifically recommend. Full disclaimer, I also sell these bikes. I have two stores, one in Brooklyn, New York, as well as Long Beach, California. We work with people all over the U.S. Just kind of take that in context, but I also have the choice to choose, you know, the best bikes that are out there, and that's kind of my goal, to find the best bikes that exist. This is what I feel is that, and these are the bikes that you would find in my store. So I'm just going to describe them a little bit, but if you want to know more about the individual bikes, we'll have links below to their individual reviews. Or if you want to learn more about cargo bikes and more about just electric bikes in general, you know, just check out our channel. Maybe you want to subscribe, and let's get into it. I'm just going to go through the list, and like last year, I'm going to do it in alphabetical order because, you know, I think all of these bikes have their own pros and cons, and really have their own ideal rider for them. So I don't know that I can rank them. It's good just to introduce them in alphabetical. Maybe that gives somebody unfair advantage, but I'm going to start out with the Benno Boost. This bike historically has been very popular for us. As I've mentioned previously, Benno, the creator of this bike, he was probably most well known for his work with this bicycle brand called Electra. So he introduced the Electra Townie quite some time ago, and it ended up becoming one of the most sold bicycles in America, perhaps in the world. He actually sold his company to Trek Bicycles, where it still operates today. He had something that was kind of pulling him back into it, and it was this idea of what he calls today is Etility, and it's basically a bike that can do more. And many could say that, you know, most cargo bikes do that, but, you know, I think from his perspective, it's not to go into the extreme sense of, like, you know, being too focused on carrying more, but just trying to find a balance between all these different elements. So he has this bike called the Benno Boost. Now, last year, as I was discussing, it was available with 2 different motor systems. This year, it's available with 3. The base model is available with the Bosch Performance motor. It's a 20-mile-an-hour motor in the U.S. with 65 Newton-meters of torque. Now, I reference the torque quite a bit because I think that this is an important factor, particularly when you're carrying cargo or going up hills and that sort of thing. It's the thing that you'll notice when you really want that power out of the bike. And they have another version which is introduced this year. It's called the Performance Sport. This will only be available in the US, but it's that same performance motor, but it has a higher top speed of 28 miles an hour. And that's a really nice addition. So you have that same kind of slightly lower price point system, a little bit more active of experience, but with that higher speed that it can assist you a little bit higher. If you want to learn more about that motor, we did make a video on that, and we'll put a link below along with the link to each of these different bikes as we go through them. The Benno Boost is a great bike if you want to carry 1 or 2 kids. They have all sorts of different accessories available for the bike. Benno is continuing to introduce more and more, and I think that was actually one of the things that he's very successful with at Electra, is just having all sorts of different options. And a cargo bike really is only as good as, like, what you can do with it. And so having these different accessories or different add-on options can be very helpful to make the bike work for you. And the Boost is available with 2 different frame styles. So they have the standard frame style or the low step frame. The low step frame just makes it a little bit easier to get on and off of, and I think a lot of times riders that are a little bit shorter will find it to be helpful, give you a little bit more clearance for your standover height when you're standing on the bike when you're not on the saddle. And the next bike on the list, going in alphabetical order, is the Butchers and Bicycles MK1E. Now, this bike has remained largely unchanged from last year. It's a 3-wheeled bike, the only 3-wheel bike on our list. Now, generally, I'm not really a huge fan of 3-wheel bikes because one of the big challenges with the traditional 3-wheel bike is when you're turning, they can have this tendency to want to tip over. And that's one of the benefits of a traditional two-wheel bike, because you naturally have that balance and it's a little easier to manage in that regard. But having three wheels can make the bike a bit more stable, but then when you're turning or going around a corner at speed, you have to counterbalance it. And if you're not an experienced rider, this can be a kind of challenging thing to do. Now, butchers and bicycles kind of came up with this unique design where the bike actually tilts, and that helps to address this concern and makes it a lot less likely to tip over. Now, one thing I will note is a lot of times people, their first time getting on it, they have this expectation that you don't have to balance on the bike, or that it's, really easy to do. But there is a little bit of learning curve, but when you do get used to it, it does help you to manage the weight a little bit easier. It's a really beautiful design. This bike is from Copenhagen. It can carry 2 kids. Actually, well, I guess if you wanted to, you could put a kid on the back as well, so carry up to 3 kids. Many people use it to carry kids. They carry their dogs, all sorts of different things like that. It's available with a bunch of different drivetrains. You can get it with the traditional derailleur, or probably more popular, the Enviolo Hub. One of the added benefits of going with this Enviolo continually variable transmission is that it's very low maintenance, really easy to use, and it comes with a belt drive, so it really improves that element of being low maintenance. If you wanted to take that simple to use interface of the Enviolo Hub one step forward, you could opt for the automatic version, which is a completely automatic transmission, so really you don't have to shift the gears at all, and it actually just shifts the gears automatically based on the cadence that you select. I should note that these bikes that I'm discussing, they have the Bosch motor system, which we found to be really one of the best motor systems on the market. It's what we solely focus on. I can highly recommend that with confidence that you'll have a good experience and it's going to be very reliable. We're going to jump from here right to the R, which is Riese Muller. We offer quite a bit of bikes from this particular manufacturer, and they offer some unique things here. We're going to talk right now about my favorite bike in particular. It's the Riese Muller Load. And I like this bike for a variety of different reasons, but one of the key reasons is its full suspension. I really appreciate having a full suspension bike because it adds to the comfort, adds to the stability on the bike. Although I'm not that old, I do have kind of a bad back, so I appreciate having that suspension. Makes it a little bit more comfortable for me. And I like the Load because it looks cool. It also goes fast. That's something that is kind of important to me because I'm using my bike primarily to replace a car, so I want it to be as efficient, if not more efficient, or at times, or really as efficient as possible to get around, to move from my house to the store or to the studio or whatever the case may be. So I find that to be really beneficial. I think it looks cool, and it's just really easy to throw things in it. I mean, it's basically like a bike with a trunk. So the Load was one of the early bikes that Riese Muller introduced. It's really always been something that a lot of people are very impressed by, very special design, and something that I think would be probably pretty difficult for other manufacturers to replicate, partly because Riese Muller has this heritage of working with full suspension and doing it in a very unique and different way. And one of the cool things about their bikes in particular is you get loads of different options. So you have the bike, which you can get in a variety of different colors. Then you can choose a variety of different motor systems, different drivetrains, and then all sorts of different add-on options. So the one challenge with that, the bikes are often built to order, so they can take a little bit longer to get. But the nice thing is when you do get it, you get kind of exactly what you want. So I think a lot of people appreciate that. But the Load is available with the standard Bosch Cargo line motor, which has a 20-mile-an-hour top speed in the U.S. or a 15-mile-an-hour, 15.5, 25-kilometer speed limit in Europe and some other markets. Now, that motor has 85 Newton meters of torque, really quite a bit of power there, and this particular bike is also available with the high-speed motor, which has 85 Newton meters of torque as well, but the power delivery is just a little bit different. With the standard motor, you get the power a little bit lower down, and then with the high-speed, you get more power as you go past that 20-mile-an-hour or 32-kilometer-an-hour marker there. You have a bunch of different drivetrain options. You can get the traditional derailleur setup, which is like a mountain bike gears that you would be most commonly familiar with. You do also have the option to get the Enviolo Hub with the belt, or the kind of highest end option, if you will, is the Rohloff hub. So that's a 14-speed internally geared hub, and that's going to be available on a couple other bikes, which I'll mention that as well. But that system's really special. It's a internal hub, so all the gears are inside of the hub, but you have 14 individual gears that you can select, and quite a wide range of gears. So this is really beneficial if somebody needs to have that really low gear as well as a really high gear, so you're climbing really big hills, but you still also want to have the added efficiency and the ability to maintain high speed. Some other details: this bike is available in a couple different configurations. You can get the Load 60, which is a 60 centimeter bed that's made to carry up to 2 kids, or just all sorts of different cargo and that sort of thing. But they have a slightly longer version which can carry 3 kids in the front box there, or whatever sort of cargo you want, but maybe you need a little bit more space, you can have that option. I personally generally ride the 60. I find it to be a little bit more nimble, but I don't find there to be a dramatic difference between the 60 and the 75 as far as handling. But storage, different things like that. Sometimes I take it inside of an elevator. So finding ways to work with that. I guess that's one thing to think about overall with cargo bikes. Something where it may work or may not work. Sometimes storage is a big thing. But Riese Muller has actually several different cargo bikes that we're going to talk about, but we're going to go from the Load, which we just talked about, to the Multicharger. Now, the Multicharger, we talked about this last year, but this is basically one of their flagship models called the Charger, where they actually just extended the rear end a little bit to add some cargo capacity and also add some ability to handle a bit more weight. Now, this bike has 26-inch wheels front and rear as opposed to the standard Charger version. But one of the cool things about this, it's considered what's called like a midtail, similar to the Benno Boost. And with that, the wheelbase is not all that much longer than a traditional bicycle. I should mention the Benno Boost, that bike has 24-inch wheels, but this Multicharger has 26-inch wheels. Because they went a little bit smaller than the 27.5, which is becoming very popular in e-bikes, and for Riese Muller, most of their bikes have the 27.5-inch wheel. With the smaller wheels, they're able to keep that, the size of a traditional bike, maybe make it easier to get it on a bike rack, or, again, maybe fit in an elevator or whatever the case may be. So I appreciate that, keeping it relatively compact. And when you look at it, it doesn't look super different. I mean, it's definitely, something special about it. That bike, you can put 2 seats on the back of it. It's coming with the new Generation 4 Bosch motor with that 85 Newton meters of torque. It's really quite powerful. And that also has all the same drivetrain options as I mentioned with the Load. You can get the traditional derailleur, they call it the touring version, or the Enviolo, which this is a continually variable transmission. I should talk just a bit more about that. Now, that you might be wondering, like, what is this continually variable transmission? The idea is, instead of a regular transmission where you have like steps, and I often describe this more like a channel clicker, like your channel 1, channel 2, channel 3, or like actually selecting the individual gears, which you might do on a traditional derailleur or like that Rohloff hub. Instead, you're adjusting this more gradually. It's kind of a bit more like a volume dial. So instead of having those individual steps, you have kind of more gradual. And you could adjust the gears exactly how you want them. And I think a lot of people really appreciate this. It's nice that you can shift a bike when you're not pedaling. And I think that riders that maybe are not as experienced, they find this to be really helpful. And beyond that, it's very low maintenance. This is also available with the Rohloff hub. All of these bikes I've mentioned so far actually are available with 2 batteries. So you can get it with the standard single battery, or as an option, you can add an additional battery. Now, the Multicharger, the standard down 2 battery or the optional down 2 battery will be 625 watt hours, which is the largest battery offered by Bosch. But if you wanted to add a second battery on the standard frame, you would add the 500 watt hour power pack battery. Now, this bike's also available in a mixed frame, which is just gives it a little bit lower entry, makes it a little easier to get on and off the bike. The mixed frame is available in just one size. However, the standard frame is available in 2 sizes, which is another update for this year. So the next Riese Muller is the Packster. Now, historically, the Packster was available in 3 different sizes. This year, it's going to be available in just 2. So they have this new version, which is called the Packster 70. And there's been a lot of hype around this. Rightly so, though, because this bike's pretty special. They've totally redesigned the bike. So instead of having the 60 and the 80, they have the 70, which I think has much larger capacity than the 60, but it's not quite as long, which is really nice. They went with a bit of a different steering mechanism. They have a cable steering on there. It produces a really responsive steering. It's really nice. They have a whole new EPP box. It's all modular. They have all different seating arrangements. You can do 2 seats. That's more like the standard child carrying option, but as an option you can add an additional rear-facing child seat. And I guess if you wanted to, technically you probably could even put another child seat on the back carrying 4 kids. And the Packster is available with the standard cargo line motor, quite a bit of torque. That's the low-speed motor, so it doesn't have that high speed. If you did want that, you'd want to opt for something like the Load if you want a front loader with high speed. It has a couple different drivetrain options. You can get the traditional derailleur system, which is the touring version. This will be the least expensive version, but if you wanted to upgrade just a little bit, you can get the Enviolo version. That bike comes with a belt drive. And then if you wanted to upgrade that further, or if you wanted just to have the bike that you don't have to worry about shifting, you can get the automatic shifting version, and that's really cool setup. Now I should mention the bike comes standard with 2 625 watt-hour batteries. This is also something a bit unique to this bike. In particular, they put those 2 batteries in the bed of the bike, so this is going to be one of the longest range bikes out there because it has 2 of the largest batteries. Some of the bikes will have 2 battery options, but not quite as large because they'll generally be 2 500 watt-hour batteries. But really great bike, very excited about it. We just got it in the shop, and I think it's going to be quite popular this year. And also in the Packster family, you have the Packster 40. This bike remains largely unchanged from last year. It's the kind of smaller version. It's good if you just need to carry a small child, just a small bit of cargo. You want a front loader cargo, but you don't want it to be much larger than a traditional bike. So the next bike on the list is the Tern GSD. This bike got a really exciting update for this year. So they have a new motor, completely redesigned the frame, comes standard with a bunch of different parts on it, and they have different drivetrains as well. So I'll just go through those really quickly, but if you want to learn more about this Tern GSD, we do have a great extensive video on that topic. So the Tern GSD historically has been one of the most popular bikes in the shop, and I think that'll continue for this year with no surprise, especially with these updates. So they added the new Bosch Cargo line motor, similar to some of the other bikes. They got this new update with the new motor and more torque, all that sort of thing. It just makes sense. This motor is made for cargo bikes, so it makes sense that these companies will be using that going forward. Now this bike now comes standard with a double kickstand, really made to carry kids and to carry that cargo, make it a little easier to manage the bike when the bike's up on the kickstand as opposed to like a single kickstand or something like that. Not really so sufficient. Some other things, like they add these like lower trays and then different lights, brakes, etc. But again, you should check that video out if you want to see that. But I just want to mention the one last thing is the different drivetrains. So they have the traditional derailleur version, which is their S10. They have the S10 LX, has some upgraded options on it. They have the S00, that has the Enviolo Hub. You might be seeing a trend here, these cargo bikes with the Enviolo Hub. We're a big fan of this hub. I think it's great. It's slightly less efficient than a traditional derailleur, but it's really low maintenance, really easy to use. And I think if you're looking at a cargo bike, you might want to consider getting a bike with this drivetrain on it. It is also going to come with a belt. This is a big update for this year. And then the last update that you'll see for the GSD, at least this year, is a new drivetrain. They're introducing the Rohloff E14. I wouldn't discount the what the Enviolo Hub is, and that's a really good option if you want low maintenance and you want a belt. But say, you like the GSD, but it just seems like too much bike for you. Tern kind of figured out a solution for this, and they have what's called the Tern HSD. Now, this bike was introduced last year, and it's been very popular for people that don't even necessarily just want a cargo bike. They just want a compact bike. They want a bike that's very versatile. They want a bike that they can share between partners, which I should say that most cargo bikes, they're generally just one frame size. So usually they can fit riders in like the low 5-foot range and upwards of 6'3", 6'4", some even taller with some modification, etc. So, this HSD is no different. The HSD is available with many different drivetrains and many different motors, depending on the options. You start with the P9, which is their kind of entry-level version. They also have the P9 Performance. The P9 has the Active Line Plus motor. The P9 Performance has the Performance line. They've also added this new derailleur version, which is called the S11. That has this new Performance Sport motor. This is the new motor for this year. We're going to see that on the Benno bike as well as this Tern HSD. And this is a high-speed motor, but not quite as powerful as the Generation 4 speed motor. And then the HSD has two other options. You can get the S8i, which has the Active Line Plus with the 8-speed internally geared hub, or you can get the S Plus, which is the Enviolo automatic. Again, another Enviolo with the belt drive, the automatic transmission. The S8i, I should mention, also has a belt as well, which is quite cool. And with the whole Tern family, they all have loads of different accessories and options for them to really outfit them to whatever your needs may be. If you want different baskets or racks in the front, or you want a different seating arrangement in the back, the HSD is good for one child or one small adult, a very small adult. They have a weight capacity of like 130 pounds on the rear rack. But the GSD is made to carry a bit more with the weight capacity around to 200 pounds on that rear rack. And getting into the next model, I'm very excited. Another super popular bike in our shop. It's the Urban Arrow, more specifically the Urban Arrow family. I mean, that's what we found to be super popular. People want a really simple front loader cargo bike that has all the options built in and a pretty good price point. Now, the Urban Arrow, I'm happy to report, is also getting that new motor for this year. We're just starting to see those come into the States here, but this is very exciting. And that bike is popular, as I said, because it's set up out of the box, ready to go to carry your family. And you could add all sorts of different options and accessories to get it set up to fit you maybe a little bit better or to accommodate you better. But if you wanted to carry a couple kids, like, you could just get it set up like that and it's ready to go. And I guess this in part, part of this like Dutch design, the philosophy from them, and just, being a family bike and being set up ready to go in that regard. And last but not least on my list is the Xtracycle. Now, it's interesting that the Xtracycle, they didn't necessarily update the motor as some of these other models, but it's still a solid bike and a really nice option. They have a lot of history in the cargo bike space. They were one of the first to introduce this long tail design, and because of that, their long tail deck design is pretty mature, so they have a lot of different accessories, a lot of experience, and the system is pretty refined. So it's a nice consideration. Maybe we'll see some other updates for them this year. I'm not really sure. It's still kind of early in the year, but we'll see what happens. They have a variety of different versions. They have the Edge Runner, the E-Swoop, the E-Stoker, and the RFA. So many different options to choose from, depending on what size of the bike you want, if how many kids, where you're going to take it, etc. Well, I hope you guys found this video to be helpful. If you have any questions about cargo bikes, or if you have some experience with these bikes, leave them in the comments below, or reach out to us, or visit one of our stores if you want to test some of these bikes out. We're always happy to help. We have several matchmakers with a lot of experience with outfitting these bikes to fit your specific needs. And I again hope you enjoyed, and look forward to seeing you in the future. Well, see you soon.